With the NBA draft taking place this Thursday, I think it's about time I share my top 50 prospects going into the draft. If I missed anyone or ranked your favorite player too low, let me know in the comments, but for the sake of time, let's get right into it. At number 50, I have Emoni Bates out of Eastern Michigan. Formerly the number 1 high school prospect, Bates had trouble fitting in at Memphis and Eastern Michigan. There's no denying his scoring talent and insane measurables for his position, but you also can't ignore the lack of maturity and the legal troubles that Bates has ran into. If you get him in a healthy environment with a trustworthy head coach, we could see the steal of the draft, but there's too much stacked up against him for him to be much higher on my board. At number 49, I have Kobe Brown out of Missouri. Kobe Brown has a unique combination of strength and smoothness at the combo guard/forward position, but I worry that his reliance on his strength won't work as well in the NBA when he has to take on guys much bigger than him, and if he doesn't have that in his game, it would really hinder him on the offensive side of the ball. At number 48, I have my favorite player from college basketball last year, Isaiah Wong out of Miami. Last year, he was a lethal scorer for the Hurricanes, and he's a creative guard with a super smooth handle. He's undersized for the pro game, and he needs to shoot a better percentage from deep, but there's no denying the production we saw last year, and he really could cut himself out a role in the NBA. At 47, I have Seth Lundy from Penn State. Lundy has risen up draft boards recently, and it mostly comes from his ability as a catch-and-shoot player. It took him a lot of time to develop in college, and there is a worry that he might have just had a fluke season last year. But if you believe in his jumper, Lundy could be a great floor spacer and have an impact day one on your team. At number 46 is Jalen Wilson out of Kansas. Wilson is a big wing who is incredibly developed in all aspects of his game outside of his shooting. He was a stud at college and a 3-year player, even won the national championship at Kansas, but he really needs to be a better shooter. If the shooting never develops, then he won't even be playable in the NBA. So even though he was a guy that spent a lot of time in college, I don't know if he's a safe pick this late down the board. At number 45, I have Keontae Johnson out of Kansas State. We all know him from his time at Florida. After a horrible injury, he transferred to Kansas State and had an awesome year this year. Johnson is a big wing who showed himself as a catch-and-shoot threat. He also has the ability to play a couple different positions, and there's a lot of things you could do with him. With that being said, he's not a great offensive decision maker, and I don't know how much I trust him with the ball in his hands at the NBA level. At number 44, I have Andre Jackson Jr. out of UConn. Jackson is an athletic forward who loves to play a gritty style of basketball, especially on defense, but he's not a great shooter and he doesn't do a whole lot on his own to make himself available from deep. As a role player, I can see Jackson developing into a solid rotational guy, but it will take some time. At number 43, I have Julian Phillips out of Tennessee. Phillips is a hyper-athletic wing who shined at times for Tennessee last year. He's willing to take a charge and get his teammates involved. He's a selfless team player, but he doesn't have an amazing offensive game, and I worry that it'll make him hard to play in the NBA level. So it may take him a couple of years in the G League to see some development. At number 42, I have Jordan Walsh out of Arkansas. Walsh is a true 3-and-D player, and his athleticism made him a guy who was tough to take out of the game his freshman year at Arkansas. Walsh's biggest question is if he can keep the 3-ball sustainable. We know the defense will always be there, but he needs a jumper to be a valid option for NBA minutes. At 41, I have Amari Bailey out of UCLA. A former top 5 recruit, Bailey still has a lot of the tools that made him such a fun prospect. His ball handling and crafty finishing makes him a threat anytime he has the ball in his hands, but he's not great under pressure, and I wasn't convinced by his playmaking stats from last year at UCLA. We know he has the potential to be great, but is it worth investing a pick in a guy who didn't live up to his expectations at school? At number 40, I have Ben Sheppard out of Belmont. Sheppard is an awesome shooter from distance, showing a versatility to shoot off the catch or the dribble. I like his defense, and I think if his shots get cold, he could still make a living at that end. I do worry that he may have reached his peak as a shooter. Being a 4-year player at Belmont and not having the free throw numbers to match up with his percentages from deep, it makes me think this could have been just one good season. At number 39, I have Terquavion Smith from NC State. Smith reminds me a ton of Clippers guard Bones Hyland. He's a pure scorer who could bring valuable points off the bench for a team on day one. He's very skinny and he isn't a great playmaker, but he'll make it to the league off his scoring alone, and he's already getting some comparisons to Lou Williams, one of the best 6 men of all time. At 38, I have Tristan Vucevic out of Serbia. Vucevic is a fun Serbian center who's confident in shooting the rock whenever he has it. His offensive game is super polished and he looks confident to score, but he's a sloppy defender and doesn't have an amazing handle. But with comparisons to Jusuf Nurkic, I can see how he could develop into a solid player. At number 37, I have Olivier Maxence Prosper out of Marquette. Maxence Prosper is an athletic and disruptive defender who is known for going hard at all times. He'll do everything his team needs to win, and he's proud of making an impact at any level. Despite these things, he needs to develop as a playmaker and a shooter. I have confidence Prosper will find success, but it will take time that some teams might just not have. At number 36, I have Jaime Jaquez Jr. out of UCLA. Jaquez was all around just a great player at UCLA. He hustles, he knows what he's doing, and he just does all the little things to make himself a threat. With that being said, he's not a great athlete and will probably hinder his game at the NBA level. His ceiling might not be high, but I think Jaime could be a perennial role player in the league if he just keeps developing how he is right now. At number 35, I have James Nagy out of Barcelona. Nagy is a versatile defender who loves to get up and block shots. His rebounding and finishing makes him a great well-rounded center prospect, but he's still getting a feel for the game and he didn't get a ton of playing time for Barcelona. That, mixed with a problematic free throw percentage, makes him slide down the board for me. At number 34, I have Chris Livingston out of Kentucky. Livingston is strong while driving to the hoop and has amazing fundamentals going downhill. He's also a solid rebounder and he's got a good feel for the game despite being a young guy. He's not a great three-point shooter and his game in general is super raw. He has some of the tools, but it'll take a lot of development to see him reach his ceiling. At 33, I have Julian Strawther out of Gonzaga. Strawther got better as a shooter every year in college and he has an underrated on and off-ball defense. He's also very comfortable shooting from anywhere on the court. As an older forward in this draft, you would have liked to see him separate himself as great at something, but going into the draft, he's more of a jack-of-all-trades type of player. At number 32, I have Trayce Jackson-Davis out of Indiana. Jackson Davis has good speed and athleticism, and based on his physicals, it's obvious that he could work out in the NBA. He's also an awesome shot blocker and a lob threat, but he doesn't have much of a left hand and he isn't confident as a shooter. I'll worry if his game will translate into the NBA, but based on his college success alone, a team's going to pick him. Number 31, I have Kris Murray out of Iowa. Murray's a really good finisher who is able to bully guys at Iowa, and his clean lefty jumper also gave him some potential as a shooter. Me personally, I'm not a fan of his inconsistency and his inability to shoot on the move. I'm much lower on him than other guys are, but I do understand the hope for the shooting upside. To me, I don't think he'll ever have the same potential that his brother Keegan had going into the draft last year. At number 30, I have Brandon Podozemski out of Santa Clara. This guy has risen up my boards ridiculously through the last couple months. He's one of the best catch and shoot players in this whole draft, and he'll pull from anywhere. You just can't leave him open. He has that shooter's touch that allows him to make contested shots with ease, but he's not a great defender and he can get beat often. He could probably use a little more muscle, but to me, he has a ton of shades of Austin Reeves, who really came into his own last year for the Lakers. At number 29, I have Sidy Cissoko. Cissoko spent last season with the G League Ignite, and he was an awesome defender and a smart decision maker on that team. He jumps out of the gym and makes poster dunks look routine. His physicality leads him to foul trouble pretty often, and his shooting inconsistency scares me a bit, but I do think he'll develop into a very fun bench piece at the very least. At number 28, I have Ryan Rupert out of New Zealand. Rupert is a freaky build. He's 6'7" with a 7'3" wingspan, and he's an awesome defender with that size and looks comfortable handling the ball. To me, he honestly just doesn't have his offensive game in order yet, and there's no telling if that side of his game will ever be elite. If he can build himself at a consistent jumper or amazing playmaking, then he's going to be one of the best players out of this draft class, but he just doesn't have that all together yet. At number 27, I have Marcus Sasser out of Houston. Sasser can score off the dribble and lead his team's offense. He's at his best when he's moving with the ball in his hands. He's also a fundamental shooter and has really good mechanics. His problem is that he's one of the older players in this draft and he's undersized compared to some of the best guards in this class. If he can put it all together and build off that amazing career he had at Houston, he could be a valuable guard in the NBA. At number 26, I have Derek Lively II out of Duke. Lively is an insane pure rim protector and was an elite shot blocker in college. He's very good at finishing dump-offs and alley-oops by the rim, and he has great size and athleticism. I don't really think he knows how to score unless it's a lob, and he loves to play himself into foul trouble. I'm not super high on him, but there's no denying the potential there, especially considering in high school he was a very versatile scorer, so maybe it was just a bad year at Duke, but a team will take him early and bank on his potential. At number 25, I have Maxwell Lewis out of Pepperdine. Lewis was an amazing finisher at Pepperdine and was above average with both hands once he got to the bucket. He's not a powerful athlete, but he's very smooth and makes clean plays often. He looks bad when he's rushed and he gets ahead of himself too often, but the goal for Lewis is to develop as a role player in the NBA and show off his skills at the rim. At 24, I have Bilal Coulibaly from the Metropolitans 92. Coulibaly played a little bit of Wembanyama's shadow last year for the Metropolitans, but his game is much different. Coulibaly has great basketball IQ and he puts himself in position to get easy buckets often. Despite being a great athlete, his shot is slow and a little ugly, In order to work out in the NBA, he'll have to put all the pieces together, but a lot of teams are confident that he'll do just that. At number 23, I have GG Jackson out of South Carolina. Jackson loves to shoot the ball more than anyone else on the entire planet. GG has never seen a bad shot, and he's good enough to make most of them. He's the youngest guy in this class at 18, and he has a ton of room to grow in all areas of his game as a 6'9" athletic forward. As of now, he's not a great decision maker or defender. His biggest goal his rookie year will be to grow his basketball IQ and get more feel for the game. If you're confident you can develop GG Jackson, he might be this class's most fun project. At number 22, I have Dariq Whitehead out of Duke. He's a consistent shot maker and has shown flashes of self-creation along with his undeniable catch-and-shoot abilities. His athleticism has taken a hit after a foot injury derailed his season last year at Duke. His biggest question will be if he's able to create space for himself to get those easy buckets at the next level, or if he'll have to become more of a pure shooter. At number 21, I surprisingly have Keyonte George out of Baylor. I'm much less high on him than a lot of other NBA scouts I know. I do know he's a very good shot creator and he makes the difficult shots look easy, but he had a lot of trouble on defense last year. He has the tools to be a great defender, but he hasn't put them all together. Sometimes he looks more like a shot chucker and he'll just be putting up anything, but I do have some faith that he can develop in a smaller role in the NBA. At number 20, I have Noah Clowney out of Alabama. Clowney is a versatile defender and a great shot blocker. He loves to pin opponent shots off the glass. He has a quick release and he's a good finisher through contact. He is not incredibly athletic and he's not a great catch and shoot threat due to his streakiness, and his lack of a mid-range game may limit his role in the NBA. But to me, he does the little things incredibly, and I'm a big believer in Clowney. At number 19, I have Leonard Miller. Miller spent last year with the G League Ignite. Miller is a versatile player. Even as a forward, he always wants the ball in his hands, and good things seem to happen when he does. He's an aggressive rebounder due to his athletic ability, and he's a smart cutter and finisher. He doesn't have great jumper mechanics, and teams will leave him open because of that, but he has all the tools to do everything else really well in the NBA. At number 18, I have Kobe Bufkin out of Michigan. Bufkin's a great finisher and has a super strong left hand. If he can put up a lefty layup, it's good. He's also a good pick and roll guard, and he has a tough jumper that allowed him to be dynamic as a scorer. He's pretty slim and gets caught up on screens because of it, but it'll be hard to see a world where Bufkin doesn't find success in the NBA. At number 17, I have Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. Sensabaugh is a 3-level scorer and was super productive as a freshman last year at Ohio State. He has good NBA size and moves athletically even while being a super strong and big guy. He's not a great defender and gets a little lazy sometimes against the twitchy guys, and I would like to see him develop his passing game a little, but he's easily cemented himself as a first-round talent based on his scoring alone. At number 16 is one of my favorite players in this whole draft, Colby Jones out of Xavier. He's one of my favorites, mostly just because I think he's one of the most underrated playmakers and one of the best defenders in this whole class. He's improved his jumper every single year in college, and his form has always been solid, so I have a strong feeling he'll stay a plus shooter in the NBA. He will probably work better off the ball in the league, as he's not much of a shot creator, but I'm personally very excited to see what Colby Jones can do in the league. At number 15, I have Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas. Smith Jr. gets to his spots really well, and he has a fun inside-outside game. He's a fluid ball handler with a 6'8" wingspan, which will help him become a problem on offense and defense in the NBA. He missed 17 games last year, and he wasn't a great defender when he was healthy, but there's no denying the insane amount of talent that he has already. At number 14, I have Jordan Hawkins out of UConn. Hawkins is a great shooter, one of the best in this class, but where he really shines is shooting in motion. He doesn't have to be squared up to make tough shots on the move. But he's not a great finisher and I don't love his handle. I think he got away with not being a great ball handler in college, but coming in at 6'5", it's going to matter a little more in the NBA. Either way, his shooting upside makes him worth a lottery pick in this year's draft. At number 13, I have Jalen Hood-Schifino out of Indiana. Hood-Schifino is a crafty point guard who always finds ways to get himself open. He loves his floater and mid-range game, and it looks great. 6'10" wingspan at a point guard is nuts, especially considering how good of a shooter he is. He had the ball in his hands a lot at Indiana, and he got sloppy with it sometimes, but I'm very high on him as a plus playmaker and a scorer in this year's class. Number 12, I have Taylor Hendricks out of UCF. He's an amazing offensive rebounder and always puts himself in the right spots to crash the glass. He's a great shot blocker and a lob threat, as well as a dynamic shooter. Sometimes he looks lost with the ball in his hands, which does scare me for a 6'9" guy, who probably won't be able to get back to the basket looks in the NBA, but all of his other pieces make him worth a top 10-ish pick in this year's draft. At number 11, I have Anthony Black out of Arkansas. Black is a freaky 6'7" guard who has all the skills to be a pure point guard in the NBA. He's very fast but also patient. For all my football fans, it's almost like watching prime Le'Veon Bell run through the offensive line. Elite burst but not out of control. Black wasn't a great shooter from the field in college and he turned the ball over a little too often, but based off all of his other tools, I wouldn't be surprised if a team jumps on him very early in this year's draft. At number 10, I have Kason Wallace out of Kentucky. Wallace is probably one of the best on-ball defenders in this whole class. He's a menace when matched up against the other team's best guard, and he's a really solid playmaker. He has some good finishing touch that gets him easy buckets around the rim. He's not a great shot creator yet, and if his offensive game doesn't develop, he might be sort of one-dimensional, but I have confidence that he'll succeed at the next level. At number 9, I have Jet Howard out of Michigan. Jet was one of the most electric scorers in the country last year, and he had the green light to shoot from anywhere on the court. He's super versatile and showed that he can coexist with other ball-dominant players, like last year with Bufkin and Dickinson. He's not the best athlete and he had some trouble with his ankle last year, but he's a guy I like a lot more than most boards. I really think he'll be a stud. At number 8, I have Azor Thompson from Overtime Elite. Azor is a much better shooter than his brother, and I'm confident he can be a high-volume three-point scorer in the NBA. He's got a great feel for the game and he can play guard or forward in the league. I worry about his playmaking as that wasn't a big part of his game for OTE, as well as the talent level of OTE, which I honestly think was pretty bad. At number 7, I have Jarace Walker out of Houston. Walker is athletic and a great defender at the rim. His paint defense is much more than purely blocking shots, as he often disrupts shots and leads to badly missed layup or dunk attempts. He's versatile on offense, flashing a clean jumper and showing powerful moves going to the rim. His biggest problem is size. At only 6'8", 240, it's hard to say if he'll have the same defensive impact at the rim that made him so great in college. Number 6, I have Grady Dick out of Kansas. Grady is the best three-point shooter in this class by a mile. He has an amazing feel for the game and the prime ability to work himself open on the perimeter. I do worry about him not being able to keep up with the faster guards on the defensive side of the ball, but the effort he puts into his defense makes me think he'll be just fine in the NBA. Dick has locked himself into my favorite floor spacer in this class, and to me he's definitely worth a top 10 pick. At number 5, I have Amen Thompson from OTE. His bag of dribble moves allows him to show off his prime athleticism as a primary ball defender, and his 6'7" frame gives him a lot to work with as a defender. He often pulls out some of the most electric dunks you'll ever see. I'm not a fan of the OTE pathway, and he was much older than many of his competitors, but you can't deny the pure talent that both of the Thompsons have. At number 4, I have Cam Whitmore out of Villanova. Cam Whitmore showed off his incredible first step last year with the agility to blow by defenders play after play. Coming in at 6'6", 230, Whitmore is a tank, and defenders often bounce off him when he drives to the rack. Some worry about his injury to his shooting hand this last season, which kept him sidelined for a chunk of the season, but assuming Whitmore comes back to his best form, we could be looking at a top-tier level talent in the league. Number 3, I have Brandon Miller out of Alabama. The Alabama sharpshooter has much more to his game than a knockdown jumper. I was mostly impressed with his ability to drive and convert putback opportunities in college this last season. His shooting form may look a little strange, but like one of his most popular comparisons, Jason Tatum, it's impossible to stop him when he's hot. Coming off a poor March Madness, I think it's fair to say Brandon Miller will have something to prove in his rookie campaign. At number 2, I have Scoot Henderson. Henderson spent last year with the G League Ignite. The explosive point guards took his talent to the G League last year and showed everything we hoped to see from the top prospect. His mid-range jumper opens up his downhill game, where he can drive straight to the rim and finish some of the most difficult shots. He might struggle to defend some of the bigger guards in the NBA, as he comes in at only 6'2", but his verticality mixed with his playmaking ability should be enough to overcome any of those issues. And finally, at number 1, I have Victor Wembanyama from Metropolitans 92. The 7'3" combo center out of France is one of the most jaw-dropping prospects of the last 20 years. He's the go-to scorer from all areas of the court, and his incredible athleticism mixed with his consistent jumper and variety of post moves make him a monster with the ball in his hands. His height and ability to block shots sets him up as an all-defensive team member from the moment he gets drafted. I worry a little about not being totally invested in all of his rebounding opportunities, but in reality, he checks every box and is the clear number 1 guy. And those are my official top 50 prospects in this year's NBA draft. If I missed anyone or put someone too high or low, let me know in the comments, and let me know who you hope your team picks this Thursday. It's an exciting time of the year, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out.